Welcome to Unlocking Human Potential with me, Andy Hosgood, a show dedicated to exploring what it really takes psychologically, behaviourally and practically to help humans thrive through conversations with leaders, founders, coaches, behavioural experts and people shaping how humans perform and grow. Is this for you? But if you're a leader, a founder, a business owner or an ambitious professional who wants to do more than just perform, they want to grow, inspire and bring the best out in themselves and their people, then keep listening, because the mission is simple: to explore how individuals and teams unlock potential in themselves, in others and the organisations they shape. Every episode is a deep but relaxed conversation built around three core questions. How do you optimise yourself? How do you unlock potential in others? And the best advice for you, the listener. Now over to the episode. Really hope you find it helpful and insightful. Just before we introduce our next guest, please make sure you press the follow button to keep updated with the latest episodes. Additionally, special thanks to 246 Photography and Pixel Made Brands for making this podcast a reality. Now over to the episode. Paul.
Andy.
Lovely to see you.
Likewise.
Thank you very much for making the journey up to us today. So, some people teach leadership from a textbook. Others teach it from scars, setbacks and experience, and actually living it. Today's guest, Paul Whyte, a transformational coach and leader who's built a reputation for helping people cut through the noise, reconnect with what matters, and lead with more clarity, confidence and purpose. What I love about Paul's approach is it's deeply human. It's not just about pretending to have all the answers. It's about self-awareness, intuition, perspective, and having the courage to think bigger than your current circumstances. People around Paul talk around his wisdom, his ability to challenge thinking, and the way he helps others raise the ceiling and what they believe is possible for themselves. In this conversation, we explore leadership, mindset, growth, resilience, and what it takes to create meaningful change, not just in business, but in yourself. So if you're stuck between where you are and what you know you're capable of becoming, then this conversation is definitely going to resonate with you. Paul, I'm going to close that now so we can focus on you. So thanks very much for joining us. I have to tell the audience this is your fault this podcast exists, because between you and Nick, this was, we've known each other 12, 18 months through the training we both did together, and you've been really, really helpful on my journey. You've added so much value to me as a human and the work I do. And through conversations with you, probably helped me really shape what the podcast was and is becoming. So it's been an absolute delight when I said, why don't you get on this? And you went, yeah, all right, mate. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Andy. It's nice to hear your kind words, and and I've really enjoyed the journey we've had together, and the energy you bring. So I'm glad to be here. First podcast for me, so a few little nerves, and it's good.
And I think that's when we do things that are slightly unfamiliar, and I'm sure we're going to explore some of that stuff during this conversation. I certainly think that people listening, and I think that's the good thing about these conversations, isn't it? That the honesty that we're going to be having, and the honesty surely the two of us share with each other. Hopefully that comes across in the conversation. There are going to be things that we are nervous about, but you are here.
I just didn't know what face to pull when you're telling me about that bio. I was I'm sitting here. But it's all good.
That's all right.
Nice. It sounds good. Yeah. That.
Do you know the reason why we do it is because a lot of people, generally think people are quite humble. And so when they were coming back, it was like, so I just went, right, okay, well, if I write it, then normally it kind of go, I think we're better at that.
Yeah.
So the big thing that runs, as you're aware, because I know you're also an avid listener of the pod, one of the things that sits through the big conversation is around curiosity. So, what's something you're curious about right now?
Yeah, so I knew this question was coming. And yeah, I don't know. Obviously curious about life, curious about people, curious about, what's possible. And I'm always try and lean in to be curious about, inspiring stories, positive stories. In today's world, sometimes the bias can be quite negative, and focused on the problems and, which I don't like to ignore and I like to be aware of, but I try and lean in and get curious about, the solutions, the inspiration. I subscribe to Positive News magazine.
Okay.
And just feeding myself stuff that's going to inspire me and motivate me and help me with that lens of what is possible, what can we do, what can we create, and what good stories we can make.
Nice.
So that's what I'm always curious about.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And look forward to kind of exploring some of them, because I know some of the topics that I think we'll end up delving into.
Yeah.
I think we'll see through that. So for new listeners, or just for Paul to put some context to what the pod, so the Unlocking Human Potential podcast kind of has three main aspects. How do we get the best out of ourselves? How do we optimize ourselves in the best possible way, or unlock our own potential? And then I think it's important that we explore how we get the best out of others. So, how do we lock potential in others? And then for me, then for the listeners, if they've given up, an hour of their time, I think it's helpful that we try and kind of add some context. So what? Piece to at the end. So hopefully we're just going to wrap it up with just a few kind of, how do we kind of, summarize the conversation in something that's going to help the audience take some action from day one.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So unlocking our own potential. Yeah. Where does that land with you?
I think we said a few times, there's a lot you could delve into here. I think the biggest thing for me is over the years my awareness has really grown.
Okay.
And not getting lost in thoughts, and some there's a lot of thoughts that are conditioned from the past and emotions. So I think now I've that growing awareness of being not the thought but actually the awareness behind the thought. And it can be called various things: presence, mindfulness. But when you're really in that present awareness state, that's when you can find out and tap into the wisdom. What's required of me in this situation? What do I need to do? How can I best serve this situation? And then from there, asking myself questions is always very powerful for me. What do I need right now? What do I need to nourish myself? What do I need to be optimal?
Yeah.
And when you just give yourself that space to be present and ask yourself these sort of questions, and try and have presence as my primary purpose.
Yeah.
So even sitting here now, I'm trying to be aware of, just have the awareness and not get lost in like overthinking, that self-talk, that critic, that noise. So that's really important for me. So, and then from there I can then build in, if I look at my week or my day to day. So obviously, my basics from, balanced nutrition, good sleep. I do quite a lot of sort of mindfulness practice, 10-15 minutes a day, just as to focus and try and create a bit more space, headspace, which is really important to me. Movement, physical movement, exercise is really obviously really helpful, and really good for like blowing out the cobwebs and that sense of reset and feeling fresh. Go out this morning to a nice park and a bit of a stretch, and and get that, you know, in that morning, get that water in, you get that daylight,
Yeah.
that sort of biorhythm. So yeah, all of that sort of stuff's really important. What else would I say about optimum and what I do generally? I think the reflection part is really, I think it's come out from a few people that I've heard on the podcast.
Yeah.
And since I've been coaching for the last few years now, that reflection piece is, you know, it's been a bit of a game changer.
Yeah.
Before I used to just like do stuff, and you might, you know, take a few things forward and learn. But when you get into the habit of reflecting, you know, what's gone well, I always, you know, I think again, you know, focusing on what's going well, dwell on that, and that builds that sort of resilience and that approach of, you know, appreciation. And then you can shine that appreciation and that what's going well into some of the things that, you know, that you need to sort of work on and stuff. So that's, you know, that always, that reflection part's really important. I try and do that, you know, 2-3 times a week.
Okay.
Just for, you know, 10 minutes. And just, you know, what's gone well, what would I wish maybe could have done different, and what am I taking away, what am I learning from this?
Oh, nice.
You know, so I've got, you know,
there's a lot there, isn't there?
Yeah. So, and then there's the flip side of, you know, you could be doing an awful lot to keep yourself optimal.
Yeah.
So I think it does come as well where you know, not taking life too serious, not taking your thoughts too serious, having a bit of playtime.
Yeah.
Trying to put as much playtime and joy into all of you doing.
Yeah.
Is key for me. And then I think one of the big things that's been important for me is that acceptance.
Okay.
Because as I said to you, like when we get lost in thought and maybe this ego, you know, and I don't know, you know, some people, I think everyone's got different, like, you know, what is ego and what's this, but for me, like, ego is it's like your unobserved mind. It's like you know, that voice that's, you know, all about me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I forgot my train of thought there. So yeah, just with that ego. So I'm gonna need to pause.
No, it's good.
Yeah. So just that reflection piece and the ego. I've lost
it's cool. Look, we'll get it. We'll get it. And I think sometimes I think where I'm, but again, that's a great example of when we've got so many things going on in our mind sometimes. Yeah. That, you know, we can do that. If I could just kind of pull you back around a little bit, and we'll bring ego back into the conversation shortly. Yeah. Because one of the things I think you've really helped me with, and I think I've learned a lot from you, and I think it's so important. Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of bringing it back to your attention, is that level of presence. Yeah. You know, I was always is probably a strong word, but I was certainly, my dominant trait was to look forward. Yeah. To try and look into the future, to be in the future, probably with the sacrifice of not really enjoying the moment, of being present. And that's certainly something you've really supported me with, is kind of finding that, you know, those moments where you can go, just be in present now. And I think for a lot of people that I speak to, they are bringing stuff from the past, and that's kind of almost shaping who they are in today and who they view themselves as in the future. Yeah. You know, or they are looking at the future and, you know, almost saying, well, when I get to that, I'm going to be happy. Yeah. Rather than that analogy of going, I could be happy today if I choose to be. Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a point here where if you're comfortable, just for people listening that can start to resonate with some of that. Yeah. And going, how can people become more present? Because I know what you've helped me with. Yeah. Yeah. But it'd be interesting to say, you know, if people listening from your experience, what could you share that would help people?
Yeah, I think that the danger of not being present is, as you said, you're constantly thinking about what next in the future. Yeah. So what can happen is you're conditioning yourself to be missing the present moment. Because a lot of times we're doing stuff that we have to do sometimes, and we'd rather be doing something else.
Yeah.
And that's where the danger comes in, that if you get into that habit of treating the present moment as just an obstacle, you then become conditioned to constantly think about the next thing or down the road. So then you're actually never really here.
Yeah.
And the only time that ever happens is right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, dare I say it, the future never comes, because when the future arrives, it's in the present moment.
Yeah.
And then going back to your question about what can you do to be more present?
Yeah.
I think it's great when you can, I think, you know, when I don't play as much football now, but football was always my, being a passion. I used to be a PE teacher. So when you're doing something that you're really enjoying it, and it's really like, that sense of flow, and you're in the moment, that you could say that is like the ultimate of being present. So, and I think, without even telling someone whether they're present or not, a lot of people are, when they're doing certain things that really grabs their attention and their interest and their focus, they are being present.
Yeah.
But I guess it's, those times when, your thoughts are taking your attention away, and you're getting, you end up realizing you've been scrolling on social media for 10, 15 minutes, and like, oh, what am I doing? And you've got lost in a story, or lost in a, away from presence, and it's all just a concept and something that you've just got absorbed in. So in terms of how you can be more present, it's just a sort of, for me, what I do is generally anchor myself with maybe some breathing, just like one conscious breath, just to bring yourself back. You heard the saying, come to your senses.
Yeah.
I think that's a great anchor.
Yeah. Okay.
Tap into your senses.
Yeah.
What you're hearing, what's around you, what you're hearing.
Yeah.
What feel the ground with your feet. The gravity pulling you, bring you down, and just that sense of grounding yourself a bit more.
I was going to say, so leaning back onto what you were saying around your self-awareness.
Yeah.
Does that play into it? So obviously becoming aware that, and we're all guilty, aren't we? We're all guilty of, we can be focused, and then, like you've said, sometimes our mind might go off thought.
Yeah.
I'll always use the example of, if people want to go back and check this out, they'll say a couple of times I've introduced the podcast with the wrong name. And a part of me is trying to go off going, oh, why have you done that?
Yeah.
But actually, I've got to pull myself back from that moment, because I'm then going to be, and that's a normal kind of process that we all go through, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can all be in the moment. We might say something, might do something, something might flick of our awareness, or all of a sudden it might be, oh, I actually got to go pick the kids up at 3 o'clock, or the busy mind piece takes us away from the present sometimes.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you're saying is, and it'd be great if this kind of what you are, just to kind of cement it for listeners, is if we become aware that we have drifted off, or we're thinking about the future, or we're worried about the past, or whatever, is there a moment there that is the trigger, the moment where we go, okay, let's just pause, let's find our grounding, let's just take a moment through breath, through conscious thought, to bring that round of eye and kind of
and I think that's where I got lost a little bit earlier, is that in that acceptance piece, about not judging yourself, not and a sense of sort of forgiving some of the stuff in the past, or forgiving yourself, and really accepting. I made a commitment this year that I want to be more aligned with the present moment, because when I'm resisting it, or I'm treating it as an obstacle, I'm actually causing myself suffering.
Okay.
Because when you resist, it persists. So if you've got a thought that's coming in that you don't necessarily like or want, rather than not wanting it, when in the past that's what I used to be, and then it's like a vicious cycle. You're sort of trying to push it away, but it's just coming back at you. It's that sense of just, accepting that thoughts come in, anchoring yourself a bit more, coming to your senses, and then just, if it's not, easier said than done sometimes, but again, it's that practice with presence, that mindfulness practice, and it's just about bringing yourself back as many times as you can, so then it becomes your default. And not getting lost and get caught away with a thought, and then you're gone for 5 minutes, and you're dwelling on it and stuff. So it's that being okay with thoughts that maybe are coming up from the past that aren't serving you, and just letting them go.
So 2 things come up for me. One, when we had the podcast with Sarah Davis, one of the things that she said was, you can notice stuff. So you can notice what's coming up. But you can choose to not interpret it. So you don't have to put any meaning to it. You can just acknowledge it and go, it's there. And go, okay, cool. And go, but you don't have to kind of think too much into it. It's just acknowledging it's there. But if it's going to come back up, I can deal with it another time. But it's fine. And then the second one is, and I know you talk about this a lot from our conversations, the lens of what we view the world. And what I'm hearing from you is that if we look at our own lens through the lens of compassion, or the lens of acceptance, or the lens of self-care, whatever you choose to do, then I think we can, like you've said, there's an element of, I think this came up the other day, and we were talking about it last night. I didn't realise I'd even posted a video, and it was me going about how we're flawed. I'm flawed, and I'm comfortable with that. But I'm kind enough to myself with my own flaws. So when we look at the lenses of the world, can you explore that for me? Because I know that's something that you...
and I think it does go back to the awareness thing as well. It's, because once you become aware, it's about where are you putting your attention? And where you put your attention is, I think, for me, really important. So it's that sense of, before you rise up, you need to wake up.
Okay.
And so it's just, it's just really important to put your attention on what's important to you. And so that links to your values, your vision.
I was going to say,
and also when you've got a certain lenses on, it's amazing what the difference it can make in terms of your perspective.
Okay.
I think we did something in our coaching training where we put like we tended to put on a number of different glasses. One is looking at someone who's being difficult. So then straight away, I remember feeling a bit cringe and a bit awkward and a bit like, this person. And then, you're putting a lens on where you're looking through a lens of compassion and this person is, wants to do good, wants to solve, wants to do well. So putting that lens on, and before I coach a session, I'll always think about that, that unconditional positive regard, non-judgment, really shine a positive, energy towards someone. So I think, and it can make such a difference to your interactions and your relationships.
And I was going to say, just curious there, if you're comfortable kind of just expanding on that, because I think, in my experience, I think a lot of people are good, and I like that exercise, and I would certainly, if any of the audience are listening, that even those imaginary glasses exercise of going, okay, so what is the lens you're going to look through? What's the glass you're going to look through? And see how you interpret a situation, I think is really powerful. The other bit that for me was, and I guess it's a curiosity question, which I'm full of, is that I think we're dead good, not dead good, but I think some of us are dead good at doing that for others. So we're compassionate with others. And we're good at looking at putting those lenses on to view others. How do we do that for ourselves?
Yeah, so
it's a deep question.
Yeah, it's a good one, because I think, from conversations we've had, I think we're both in the past, people pleasers.
Yeah, 100%.
Like I was, I think growing up, I was very much like, wanted everyone to be all right, and a bit of a yes man.
Yeah.
Which can catch up with you, because you can't do it all, and and I've come to realise that, and I think it's the theme's come through a few times on your podcast, is that sense of self care is care to others.
Yeah.
So I think it's massively important to be compassionate to yourself. Look after yourself, make time for yourself, give yourself time to reflect and explore what's really important to you. Again, where are you putting your attention? What are you doing that's serving you? A while back, as a coach as well, I do some stuff, work on myself as well, and that sort of, again, asking myself questions. What do I need to nourish myself on a week-to-week basis? Looking at that, what's energizing me, what's not serving me, and identifying, not serving me. Yes, in the past I might have been caught on, Facebook or social media for 20 minutes here and there, or, and, looking at what you're doing is what's serving me, what's not serving me, and then putting things in place to basically look after yourself so you can be the best for yourself and others.
Yeah, which again comes back to looping it back to that values vision piece that you're talking about as well, isn't it? Because it's the identity of, okay, what am I trying to achieve, and is this helping me get there? And if not, okay, so why am I holding on to this?
Yeah.
And asking yourselves those questions.
Yeah.
But looking at through that lens of compassion, rather than beating yourself up and going, oh my God, this isn't helping to me, and this. Yeah. It's going, okay, why am I holding on to this? And leaning into yourself with curiosity, isn't it? And I think we are, from the conversations we've had, and I can only talk for me. Yeah. I've certainly been guilty in the past of kind of things haven't gone right, and the first thing you do is kind of judge yourself with that. And then, I've always said I am my biggest critic, which makes me quite comfortable in most situations, because there's nothing that most people can say that I haven't said to myself even worse. Yeah. So that, which gives you an air of confidence, but actually can be sometimes. So actually doing that, but it comes back to what am I trying to do and what am I trying to achieve? And I think it's really important, and I'd be curious where this lands with you, about how us taking our time, and I like the reflection piece. I think it's something people don't do enough of. Yeah. When you did it, if I could share something, when you did it, there was a pause of saying, oh, I look after myself in this way, but it's almost like, or you ask yourself these questions. Yeah. It's almost like there's a hesitant of why you should do it. Whereas I think you then followed it up with going, well, it's important. If I need to be optimal, you've got young kids, you've got a wife, you've got a great business, you've got friends and family around. Yeah. I think it's so important that we ask those questions and that we are aligned, because I think, and again, I can only talk for me, but I feel better when I feel purposeful. Yeah. And when things are aligned of what I'm actually doing and the person I'm attempting to be. Yeah. Don't always get it right, mate. Yeah. Get it wrong a lot of the time. So where does kind of, or how do people start to, or maybe how did you, maybe start with that, how did you really understand what was important to you, and then I think allows you to then come back to those things? Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've said to you a couple of times, I think the game changer for me was a few years ago, was realising I didn't have to be my thoughts. Yeah. I think I've said to you as well, like in my mid to late 20s, I did have some sort of mental challenges, and I'd probably sort of say a bit of a breakdown. Right. Come back from travelling, and I was having sort of, again, that sort of yes man. So it was a bit of a, like, there was an imbalance. I was doing a lot of stuff, and then living life to the max. It's in your 20s and 30s as well. Yes. You feel confident, and you're young, and you want to, there's a quite an adventurous person. Yeah. But it was an imbalance, and I really had I sort of had a good voice and a bad voice. Okay. And that inner voice was just. And the danger is you just get lost. You're completely identified with these voices and those thoughts. And when I realised, from quite spiritual, right.
when I realized that I didn't have to buy into that thought, and actually, if those thoughts can come and go, I'm not the thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm the awareness behind the thoughts, and that's a game changer for me.
Yeah.
So when I realized that, when you realize that and you've got that awareness, you've then got, biggest thing you've got then is a choice.
Yeah.
Is a choice. How do I want to think? How do I want to live? How do I want to respond to this situation?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on autopilot and you're lost in thought, you're just reacting to things in life with no intention, and you're just going through, and you are on autopilot to a certain extent, and also you're not here right now, and that's what I said earlier. You get into a trap of constantly treating the presence as an obstacle to get somewhere else. So for me to find my purpose, I think that spiritual path's been really important. And then once, again, when you've got that awareness and that reflection and that space to move away from those thoughts, you can actually start thinking about, what is important to me, and sit with it. Ask yourself, asking yourself these questions when you've got a space to really just see what comes up. And what's been, even in the last year or two, even for me as well, has been a game changer, is tapping into that body intelligence, and I guess it's life intelligence. Of, we're sitting here right now, our bodies are digesting, our heart, we are like you look when you, again, at that lens of when you think about all the miracles and the amazing things about life, that intelligence is like miraculous. And when you can tap into that lens, and feeling like that, and having that, it's really powerful. And I think it's come through again on your podcast, when you're we've all got unique skills with abilities, and I think when you're doing things that interest you, that resonate, that you're passionate about, you're more likely to to have the motivation, but you're also more likely to be consistent with it. So I definitely feel like I'm on a path now where I'm doing more things that resonate, and I'm grateful for. So it's that real sense of just creating the space for yourself to really sort of go deeper about what is important to you, and trying to follow that, but also remembering you've got a choice about how you respond, where you put your attention, and it is so powerful.
And it was interesting because the word powerful was resonating in my head. And when you used it, I went, okay, we're aligned here, because that's what it felt it. It felt it. I watched your body language. I watched the energy move and shift when you were talking about it, and I felt that from here. And I think it is, isn't it? And there was almost like, and I think that's where that whole self-acceptance bit comes in. And I guess the bit that was picked up for you, and I don't know where this lands with the audience, and I guess one of the things I would kind of in this moment pause and get people to maybe think about is, when was the last time you stopped and thought, you were saying, that taking that time to reflect over what is it I want, where am I actually going with stuff, what choices am I making, are they actually aligned? How often do you actually do that? I know the roles we both play as coaches, that's kind of the space that we hold. Not to really put you on the spot, but I am. How could, so people listening now who have gone, gosh, I can't even think when I'm going to fit that into a day. What would be kind of a little action point that we could just throw in the middle of here?
Well, I think the biggest thing that's going to motivate people is that the cost of not giving yourself, not giving yourself the time. Because, if you're constantly, that constant doing, and I get it, life can feel very busy at times and constant doing. But I think it does link back to that culture we've maybe got into of, I guess, individualistic. What can life do for me?
Yeah.
What can I, what can I get out of life? And this is something that was, for me, a few years back. So I guess it's about, I think it is about, you do have to slow down, and so something's got to give, so whether it's the amount of wants you've got, the amount you're chasing, the amount you're doing. I've definitely slowed down and try and enjoy the more simple things, because there is so much joy from just the simple things.
I agree.
And again, if we go back to that ego and that sort of like, lost in thought, and, I think there is still quite a big human condition that is lost in thought. And it's that sense of, wanting and craving things, but in the end, do these things, these material things and stuff, really make you happy? And I think when you move away, when you come back a bit more to just the here and now, and what can I appreciate about life right now, and all the beauty there is, when we look through the right lens, I think that is, inspiring, and just it's still a journey for me. I've said to you last night, I had a busy weekend, and I still have times where I trying to bring, my ego is heightened, and I can sometimes get triggered, and it's just about, the more you practice being present and mindful, when you are here and now as well, you're not fearing, you're not worrying about the past, you're not fearing about the future. There is a real sort of trust of, the right response will come through if I'm coming from a place of that, tapping into that life intelligence I talked to you about.
But like you said, and it resonated, and so I'm going to repeat it back just to make sure that I've understood it right. There is no future, because when we move to that future, we're actually in that present moment then. So actually, where you are in 2 weeks' time, when you get to that 2 weeks' time, you're in the present. So actually, it's the bit that you should be focusing on as a present in it. Whereas, and that's that's so when you said that in the way you said it, I went, ooh, that was powerful for me to hear.
Life only ever happens in the here and now.
But I think that sometimes we forget that, don't we? Because of the hustle and bustle of it, and people are going to be listening to this, driving to work, walking the dog, wondering what they're going to cook for the tea, or what time they have to go and pick the kids up, or oh my god, am I ready for that meeting, or I've got this meeting, or I hope you hurry up and get to the point so I can finish this. Do you know what I mean? All of those things become life that we've got. And I think, it's really nice that you're mentioning it, and others have mentioned it, and I think it's really important. That's hence why I've kind of brought it back. So I think it's something which I feel we don't acknowledge enough. I think we don't act enough. We forget that actually to enjoy this bit. I mean, when we were doing Tom Blackledge, he was talking very much around, he almost forgot to enjoy his journey to the UFC. Now, injury made him stop fighting early. But part of that journey, which you'd have thought would have been really enjoyable, because it was that what's next piece. And I think a lot of people are, I've certainly been guilty of that. It's people like yourself who've put the reins on me, which is great, and I value that massively. And I guess it's probably one of the reasons why I'm stepping on this topic a bit longer, because I think it's important, because of the power that it's been for me, and and especially my thanks to you for kind of bringing my awareness to that a lot, and hence why I'm kind of hanging around this point a bit.
One other thing I would say is I guess it's the mind is a great tool, and the mind wants to help us out. Wants to help us with what we're going to get for dinner tonight. What are we going to what is down the road? What do I need to organise? It's such a great tool. But how are we using that tool? So the first thing, as I said to you, is your mind your master, or are you the master of your mind? And it's a bit like your phone. is your phone the master of you, or are you the master of your phone? So it's about, once you're aware of your thoughts and you've got that awareness, you can make the choice about, whether you let your thoughts run your life, emotions or thoughts from the past run your life, or are you aware that you can step back from them and then make a conscious choice about, what's important to you and what you do. And also I just want to but on the acceptance piece, that's not accepting that, when I say about accepting acceptance and being aligned with the present moment. So you might get something that you don't, you didn't really need or want, but you're in the situation. So there's an element of acceptance and not resisting that situation. Doesn't mean you can't take action or do something about it. So, so I think it's that piece about acknowledging the mind is a great tool and how can we best use it, and not letting it control us, but remember we are the awareness behind it, that we can use it in the best way possible.
I think it's a really powerful message to be sharing, and I'm glad that's come out of this conversation, because I think it's really, really powerful, and I think because people are led by the mind, aren't they? And I think that is, and sometimes that, and actually that allows you to control. So I think that's really powerful. That's coming out of this.
It's just an ongoing practice to not identify with the thoughts that keep coming up, because we're so conditioned.
But again, I think that's the other part, isn't it? There's an assumption that this stuff's easy, and I think I've used this quite a lot. So for listeners that have heard this story a lot, then I apologise. But one of the things is, when people say to me, "Oh, you come across quite grounded," or like you've got all your ducks in a row. My response is always a laugh, because it's like, no, not at all. But I accept I'm a work in progress. I accept I'm in that constant battle daily. I've even got to the point where I've to keep myself accountable to stopping at the end of the day. I've started doing gratitude with my daughter. Where even if we just what the one thing we're grateful for today. Purely because, and this is, that I know with me encouraging her to do it, she'll hold me out, because at the end of the day, she'll ask me the question because I've made her do it. So it makes me stop. And it's by us turning it into an exercise. My accountability also is, she likes to go in the gym. And sometimes I just don't feel like going. But she's like, "We go in the gym?" And I look at her and go, yeah. And I think it's, so for me also, it's sharing that with others that are close to you. And sharing that power also helps you on that journey, because they, they understand, you understand. And I think, but also it helps you, other people, you accept other people, but I think other people accept you as, we are all work in progresses.
And I think that gratefulness piece is, that's something that I think is really powerful as well. And again, about that appreciation can energize you and inspire you.
No, definitely.
And again, build on that, that lens you're looking through.
Lovely.
That's good.
So just thinking about what we've talked around now, and we've, it's been a really nice, deep conversation.
Straight in.
It would be,
gone deep,
it was always going to be the one. We're never going to be. There's never going to be a fluffy conversation. So how do we take what we've talked about ourselves, and how do we start? If we lean into maybe you as a coach and the roles that you've done. How do we then kind of imprint or help others find these skills or share these skills, or how do we help others unlock the potential out of themselves?
It's another big topic.
I know.
But since being on the coaching journey, moving away from trying to help people, advising them or trying to help them with, come up with a solution for them, for me, I've really moved away and moved towards, that listening to understand, and we've all got this innate potential in us to really, to come up with the solutions to our own problems and challenges. So I think it's about really listening, giving a space to people, showing that they matter, that real attention and interest in what they're telling you, and and then it gives people the space and the courage to think for themselves, as opposed to others being on the flip side, wanting to help, and then the other side, that people will naturally think someone's going to help them and give them the solution. So the empowerment piece is massive with coaching, and it's about creating the behavior to encourage that. So again, listening, attention, showing they matter, asking them some questions around the challenge and what they could maybe do about it, opening their perspective. Or is that true? Where's this assumption coming from? Because a lot of us hold real, if we're not present, we are only thinking from our conditioned past and experience. It's good and bad in a real mix. But can you when you have that space and you give someone that space, open up that perspective. What's the assumption you're holding here? Is that true? I sometimes say to me, if a thought comes up, is this true? And a lot of the time, if you just give yourself this, really listen and have that wisdom, and in the present moment to see what comes up, you can find that wisdom and also that perspective that really opens up your options and your choices and in how best to respond. So I think that's really important as a leader, that you have that, so even like in some of the meetings I've been chairing, recently, giving everyone the opportunity to speak, knowing, and so setting the ground rules and contracting at the start, no interruptions. Also start going around the room about what's going well. So you're balancing the scales in terms of the bias, in terms of, a lot of times we come to me and right, what's the issues we need to sort out? What's the problems? So by starting on what's going well, you're straight away, you're lifting the energy into an appreciative lens about the solutions and that focus. And then by giving everyone around the room a chance to speak about, you maybe cover a few agendas, what we want to talk about, but making sure everyone's got designated time to say something. Because it can be a case of people taking the limelight, wanting and more people that a bit more confident talking. So that that's really powerful, and it's just I think it's just the culture and behaviour of how you're interacting and what you're putting out there to allow people to think for themselves, to have the courage to say something, to be vulnerable. To that non-judgment piece, again in those meetings, by setting that framework and that environment, just allows people to feel like they matter. And then they've actually got the space to think with quality, and and then anything's possible.
And I think. I think sometimes we take for granted that how powerful just holding that space can be.
Oh yeah, really powerful.
And just allowing people to, and especially when they realise they're going to get the opportunity to say what they need to say. Because like you've said, especially in group situations, and I think we've all experienced it, there's somebody that normally has a lot to say and really comfortable saying what they need to say, but may not always be right. They have an opinion, which could be right, but it could also be. But also there's the bit of, I think we talked about this last night. One of the things that how all the different voices in our head and how they might all contradict each other. They might all lean to each other. But I think when you're in a group situation, you could have depending on the size of the group or the team. Lots of different opinions. And actually the power of that can actually strengthen it to become, we are greater of a sum.
Yeah.
But that only works, doesn't it, when you create that culture environment where we can all say what we need to say.
Yeah.
And actually, how do we... Because you only need one person to come up with the best idea and they go, yeah, let's all do that.
Yeah.
Whereas if there's not an opportunity where people can say that.
Yeah.
That, and for me, the concept of psychological safety kind of sits in and around that, and a lot of the work that Amy Evanson's done and stuff. So just with that, if there's people listening, how would you, and I'm not saying you have to give all your secrets of how you give it away, but for people that maybe are leading with teams that would like to create a little bit more of an environment where their team are more comfortable to stand up. You talked about contracting.
Yeah.
Do you want to share for listeners that may be unfamiliar with... we're familiar because from a coaching world, it's kind of what we do all the time. Can you just explore what contracting or group contracting might look like for those people that are unfamiliar with it?
I think it's... So if you've got a meeting or even just the dynamics and the environment as a team you want to create, I think it's the ground rules really, and it's like an agreement.
Yeah.
How are we going to agree to behave and work together? So if we've got an example for a meeting, it's like, we're going to give each person a chance to speak. We're not going to interrupt until they're finished. How do we, there's various things you could cover in that agreement. And I think that the key thing as well is to make sure that everyone, again, has something to say about what they want that agreement to look like.
Yeah.
And all contribute, because again, in terms of the coaching, a lot of it's not about telling, it's about asking.
Yeah.
So when people are coming up with the solutions, coming up with the ideas, they're so much more empowered and motivated.
Yeah.
To act on it and do it. So I think yes.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry, because the only thing with that is, and one of the things that what came up for me, and I'll forget it if I'm honest. That's why. Was that's going to come from you as a leader, being trusting that they're going to come up with the stuff. I think a lot of, and especially in my experience, a lot of leaders or people who, sometimes may not trust all the people they work with to think, well, they might not have the answers, or I'm the leader, so therefore I should have all the answers.
Yeah.
It's having the belief, and I think you said it really nicely earlier on, to say that trust in each person's got all the answers with themselves, all the skills with themselves, all the understanding in themselves. And by creating an environment where allowing that to come out, I think it's sitting in that world of trust, isn't it? Where we trust it. If we've got people in the room, they know what's good for them.
Yeah.
And we're comfortable now that's good with them.
Yeah.
So if we can create an environment where they can tell us, then together we can create an environment that suits everybody.
Yeah.
In the right way. But it's holding the trust that we know people have got that, which I think some people struggle with.
And I think as a leader or a coach, you've got to lead on that. You've got to show that.
100%.
You've got to practice that.
Yeah.
So they've got to see it in you.
Correct.
So that's really important.
No, I really like it.
Yeah.
So when you've got talking about this unlocking in others, where else does that land with you, or anything that you would kind of, the leaders out there, any ideas, anything that you've shared, anything that you think is helpful to support others from either your world as a leader or your world as a coach? Because we've covered a lot of
I think there's definitely a piece about tapping into that embodied intelligence and getting your staff, getting team or leaders to really, become more present and also use that embodied intelligence. Now, what is embodied intelligence? Is that coming to your senses piece again. So it's, if you've got challenges and you've got stresses, or you take it. Sometimes we can take things on personally. And by, you know, using some techniques and practices, it's about putting some of that, excuse my French, but like, you know, shit in the space.
Yeah.
You know, don't take it on personally.
Yeah.
You know, anchor yourself in that sense of, you know, come into your senses, and just that, again, that trust and that, you know, innate potential of what we're all capable of. So I think that's really important. And that, you know, again, when you've got that awareness, you've really got, you're building your capacity to respond in a more helpful way, rather than reacting based on, you know, old thoughts and conditions. So I think that's again, like I said to you before, that my primary purpose is to try and always remain present. Doesn't happen all the time, and it's a practice, but I know when I'm in that space, I'm a lot less fearful. I've got a lot more trust and confidence. I've got that deeper knowing, that deeper, even though I don't know what the future holds, there's just that deeper knowing. So I think that's really important. And obviously I think that learning piece is really important as well, for everyone to have, you know. So as a leader, are you making the time to, are you giving the person your attention and the space to really, you know, reflect and learn and develop? Or is it all about, you know, the profit and getting stuff done? Are you making the time to are you making the time to develop people? Which is the thing that's funny is, if you get, you know, by giving people the quality time and space to think, you're actually saving time.
Yeah, agreed.
Because the quality of it will get you, will cut out a lot of the unnecessary, and you'll get somewhere quicker. But it is upfront, you know, quite, you know, putting in the time and investment. But it's, you know, it's so worth it. But and that's where you really tap into that compassion piece as a leader or as a coach. You know, the compassion to listen and not try and answer their problem, to tell them what to do, to show them they matter, to show them to believe in that, to really believe and show them that, you know, they can find a solution. When you're showing that lens on them, they feel so much more able and motivated.
And then it's you staying in that place of trust, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, trusting in them.
Yeah.
And I think that shows over time. But I agree. I think, you know, I think a lot of people are very quick to jump to finding paid solutions, where actually, and invest in faster technology or better technology, where actually what we're saying is, can we put our investment of just time, presence with a team member can actually be miles more valuable to a business organization or anything, can't it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on. It does happen, and it is happening, but it can get lost to the busyness and the chasing of, you know, profit. And I'm not saying profit's a bad thing, but I think when you can get that balance between people, profit, and I guess planet, you know, nice. and tick all those. I think that's Sir John Whitmore that was his. You know, that's the balance we're trying to achieve. You know, that's great, and that's where that wisdom comes from. About, you know, wisdom to not just make another problem and just solve this one, but how can we look at the situation from a wider lens that's not going to create further problems, but also allow all of us to sort of, for the betterment of others and as a team or a group, to flourish. So I think it, you know, for me it's massive, and it's so powerful. It's a practice, and it does take real compassion and time and investment, but what it can create and you know, make is can be, you know, amazing.
No, I love it. Just before we kind of move into so what, and we leave the listeners with some advice. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
which
You need to lie down
yeah,
after
well,
this.
no, it's good. I love it. I knew this would be a really good conversation. So for me, it's been great, and there's lots to reflect on. But I'm staying present before I kind of move to that. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel would be helpful?
I think we didn't mention. I think we touched on it, but I think, what are you? When you've got a chance and that space to really think about, what are my values? Who do I want to be? What's my vision? And I think, again, for me, I've moved away from little old me and what can life do for me, to move a little bit more about how can I best serve.
Okay.
That might sound a little bit like, who's this do-gooder? But I think, being mindful of what your values are and what you really believe in and what resonates, it keeps you focused. Like I think I've heard you say about it as well. I mean, I've got a picture board on my phone of, things that are important to me, and where I want to put my focus. So I've got family pictures of family, and I've got various pictures on there, and like I started that about 7 or 8 years ago, and a lot of stuff on there has come to fruition. So I think, again, it's that law of attraction. What you put your focus on, where you put your attention, what is your intention, and again, what's the saying? I think it's ask and you will receive. Is that sense of what you focus on is what you're gonna that is where your energy is gonna go. So for me, that's important. So like a vision board, get creative. What do you want to create? You can be the writer of your own story. It's in our hands. So,
and I think what's quite nice about that, as it brings it all back round, is you get what you focus on, or you know, and so be careful what you focus on.
Yeah.
If you're focused on, things that aren't helpful, then is there a surprise that we're probably going to see less helpful things? Where actually, if we become more self-aware, more present, more bring us back to the moment of going, is what we're doing today actually aligned with what I would like the world to give me?
Yeah.
And if it's yes, then cool, let's stay in this moment. If not, what do I do about that? Or what do I need to ask myself?
Yeah.
I love that. What's 3 practical things that people could try today?
So I think, there's lots we can all do, but I think for me, if they could practice becoming more present.
Yep.
So I think, how do I do that? I think it's a case of, you could literally ask yourself a question to say, where's my awareness right now? Where's my attention? Am I lost in thought, or actually can I come to my senses and just bring myself? What can I notice? Sounds. What can I feel?
Yeah.
And just and also, again, feel the aliveness in your body.
Yeah.
And like that, how amazing things are. And then that can sort of ground you to then think about, right, where do I need to now move to next? So I think, like I say, simple question about, where's my attention right now?
Yeah.
What am I aware of? Recently on LinkedIn, I did a sort of practicing presence challenge, from having an hourly reminder on your phone, just a little chime.
Yeah.
Just to remind you to maybe just take a pause.
Yeah.
Is what I'm doing actually what I need to be doing right now?
Yeah.
What's most important to me? Is this important? And just checking in with how you're feeling, what you're doing, and again, maybe ask yourself a question: what do I need to do right now? What is this? So I think that can be powerful. I'd recommend that. Do you say 3?
Well, but there was a lot there, so you don't have to, because there's quite a few things for people to do there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had another one you wanted to share, if you don't, then that's cool. We can.
I think another one. I think we touched on it yesterday. I think once you've got that awareness, and I guess that choice, I don't like to put intention on everything, but like before I coach, I'll say to myself, imagine ...
Okay.
You know, I think Einstein said creativity is everything. You know, and just that line, imagine ... and then I think about what I want to create, and it goes back to that: see it, say it, believe it. You know, and you know, visualize it, and how powerful that can be. To you know, it's like I think they say that, you know, if you visualize it, it's like your body thinks it's already happened.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, once you've got that awareness, you know, using the power of intention to be less reactive and more, and respond better. And, you know, again, where are you putting your attention? You know, and I think when you've got that intention, you're not then getting distracted as much. And, you know, we live in a world that's constantly fighting for our attention.
Oh, yeah.
So having an intention about what you want to do is really important. So that imagine ... but also I sometimes use as well, you know, what qualities do I want to bring to this coaching session?
Yeah.
So I think that'd be quite useful. You know, so for example, your week, imagine ... or your day, imagine ...
I like that.
But not being hard on yourself if it doesn't all come off. But it's amazing the amount that does come off.
Yeah.
When you have got that focus.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice point, and I think that is just, you know, coming back to the start of where we kind of that compassionate lens of going, if it doesn't come back, but maybe then bringing your attention to, okay, so what have I learned from this?
Yeah.
That feedback loop piece again, I think you talk around.
Yeah.
You know, what can I take from this? What has gone well? What hasn't gone well?
Yeah.
And then just go, is there an understanding of why it didn't go well, and what would you do differently?
Yeah.
I think is a really powerful time.
Yeah.
But again, I think you've touched on it a couple of times, is just taking that time to reflect.
Yeah.
You know, and taking the time for yourself, isn't it? And I think
and I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree.
Is making the time.
Yeah.
So I guess I think, you know, ask yourself the question: how can I make time to do this?
Definitely. One principle you wish every leader understood.
I think it's definitely around that empowerment piece, and I think it's about, you know, asking and not telling. I think that's really, really powerful. And even going when we talked about the feedback, you know, asking that person, you know, asking them to tell you what's going well, what would they wish, what's the learning, you know, and then you can, you know, by asking them some questions around it, they can go deeper and really have a more powerful, and then taking some ownership about how they want to move things forward.
Yeah.
So I think asking, not telling is works. I find powerful. Yeah.
Awesome. So thinking about this conversation, is there any insights that, again, that we've probably not covered that people could turn into action? There's been a lot of action points in this already. I'm just curious before we kind of wrap up.
Insights into action. I think we covered. I think we covered some real good stuff.
Okay.
I think I did mention it about, you know, try and smile more, try and be more playful, try not to take you know, life and your thoughts too seriously.
Yeah, I like that.
And you know, that try and bring as much joy into what you're doing. You know, even if it, you know, you're drying up, you know, doing the dishes, you know, rather than seeing it as a chore, can you bring a little bit of presence to it? And just you know, really feel the aliveness of being present and what that can bring, and you know, the possibilities from that. So
love it. Love it. So for listeners, where can they find you?
Mainly on LinkedIn. Be launching a website soon, Nature Peak Coaching. So it's about, you know, naturally empowering people to rise, and I think that nature thing as well is about trying to be our true nature.
Nice.
And not the ego and the you know, the thoughts that don't help us. And I think when we're coming from that place as well, you know, we will be at our peak.
Yeah.
We are performing better. We are in more aligned to, you know, what's important to us. So LinkedIn.
And the website will be launched soon, so we'll put all the links and everything for that below. That's great. Any final challenge you want to set our audience before we call it a day?
Final challenge. Good question. I don't want to keep banging on about the same thing, but
it must be really important if we do. So
challenge. Hold on, just have a sip of water.
Yeah.
I think just be kind to yourself and try and ask yourself more questions.
Nice.
More questions about, you know, what is it you need to be doing? What, you know, how can I best respond to this? Or, you know, what's not so, you know, have a question approach, like the leaders as well, you know. So I think that's powerful. So what questions can you be asking yourself more?
Nice. Yeah. Paul, it's been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate you a lot. It's been brilliant.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.